Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Draft Room. This is the NFL Draft Show of the Packernet Podcast Network. Today is Monday, so we're going to be doing Mock Draft Monday. We're going to rip through the first round, and then we'll add on at the end teams that don't have first-round picks. So this is going to take a little bit of time, so I don't want to waste any time chit-chatting. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and get started? Some of these first picks, two-ish, are pretty straightforward and don't really require a lot of discussion. The Las Vegas Raiders, at least as of right now, there is no discussion. We'll be selecting quarterback Fernando Mendoza. The general idea behind this is that there's one top-tier quarterback and then there's a massive drop-off, which means one quarterback-needy team at the top gets that guy. Everybody else is going to have to either roll the dice or wait a year. And so with that being the case, the Raiders do the obvious thing and take that one quarterback. Then you have the Jets, and this one also seems relatively straightforward. Seems odd at first blush because we're talking about a supposedly a linebacker. I don't know when we get to officially change his designation, but Arvell Reese is generally seen as the Micah Parsons type in this class. I am going to be interested to see his combine because that's a very important part of the equation, at least for me. Could be wrong. I don't know how you can call yourself Micah Parsons and then run like a 4.65 or something, you know what I mean? So that'll be interesting. But at this point in time, there doesn't seem to be a ton of discussion. There hasn't been much for the last couple of weeks since the Senior Bowl that has really moved things around. We'll see if this gets further solidified or maybe in lying season we start to hear some new things. But the Jets will select Arvell Reese. As for the Arizona Cardinals, we're getting a little bit more iffy. So to give you an idea, if you look over at NFL Mock Draft Database, Fernando Mendoza, 98% being selected to the Raiders. Arvell Reese, 72%. Then it drops off to 37%, meaning definitely not a consensus. However, if you look at this guy as well as the next guy, you realize that it's really more of a question of which of the two at this position. And so the outright leader is Francis Mauigoa. There is a discussion about Spencer Fano. And so, again, it's not really a question of what are we going to do. They're going to draft as of now, the consensus seems to be they're going to draft an offensive lineman. It's just a question of which. But I think the general consensus right now is that Francis Mauigoa is the Paris Johnson counterpart. He's the guy at right tackle that we can plug in as a giant mauler type to come in and be the complement and get this offensive line where we want it to be. That will be probably a long-standing debate. And on the consensus board right now, they're just two spots apart. It's Mauigoa, Bailey, then Fano. So they are very close, seemingly in terms of value, but Mauigoa seems to be the pick based on fit as of right now. Then at 4, we have the Tennessee Titans. I know last week when we did a mock draft, I had them taking Ruben Bain, which makes sense because Ruben Bain is slightly higher on the board. I'm guessing that will change over time. But if we can, let me see if I pull up the old notes here. Tony Pauline. Well, there's a couple different things here. Actually, no, it is mostly Tony Pauline. He said, I'd be shocked if the Titans pass on him, referring to David Bailey, the edge rusher. There was another note here. Multiple outlets now have David Bailey firmly on the Titans shortlist at 4, with phrasing from Tony Pauline level sourcing that it would be shocking if Tennessee passed on him in that spot. So the thought is that it's just a better fit for what the new coaching staff is going to be looking for. It's the kind of player that they like. So again, we'll see. But as of right now, David Bailey seems to be the odds-on favorite to be the pick. If we look at the Titans, again, it's very similar. It's not really a question of what, it's a question of who, because Ruben Bain is the next most popular option. And so, again, we're almost certainly drafting an edge rusher. It's a question of which, and right now, at least the media folks out there are convinced that Bailey makes the most sense. I think when we get to the Giants is where it starts to get legitimately questionable. I think they can go in a lot of different directions. There's a lot of different talent available to them that could make sense. Spencer Fano of Utah, and in fact, Maui Goa is one of the most popular picks to them. He's obviously gone, so Spencer Fano would be an option. Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, is the most popular pick as of right now. There's also a question about Caleb Downs, who we just recently talked about when we went over the safeties and whatnot. And if you remember how incredibly impressive he is, it's just really just a question of value. Do we dare take a guy that high? I don't think there's any question, at least for most people, that Downs would be the removing positional value. He's the best player on the board. Maybe Jeremiah Love. You could make that same argument, but as far as what the Giants are looking for, Caleb Downs is the best player, but the positional value may not bring us what we need. And so I think Fano and Tate are probably the biggest question marks. The Carnell Tate thing, I think what maybe pushes some of the debate in another direction is the fact that we already have Neighbors, who's, number one, he's a talented guy, but number two, we took a pretty big swing on Neighbors. Do we want to do that again? And, how many times are we going to get top 10 picks here? Are we just going to keep swinging at wide receiver or what? We also desperately need offensive line help. We have one really top offensive lineman, and that's about it. Look, if it's me, I'm probably taking an offensive lineman if I'm just being completely honest. Or Downs would maybe be my second option. Not only do we have Neighbors, but I think Wan'Dale Robinson is actually a talented guy. However, as of right now, nobody cares. Neighbors tore his ACL, really bad situation, full meniscus repair. So I think people are maybe, of the mind that Neighbors is not going to return fully, or they're just looking at this as being in a sort of short-sighted way of, well, we're not going to have him for a while, so let's get. I don't know. But Carnell Tate certainly is the favorite right now for the Giants. Getting Dart another option, which, again, can I just say, I'm going to do it anyways, but I'm annoyed. I know he's only been diagnosed with a concussion, I think once, Jackson Dart, but the amount of times he's taken shots to the head and has been pulled for concussion evaluation because he took a hit to the head and got up all wobbly and stuff. You can say that it wasn't officially called a concussion, whatever. I feel like we're being stupid here, where it's like, oh, he just needs more targets. How about we stop him getting hit in the face? No? Okay, we're going to go flashy and get a wide receiver? Okay, cool. All right, fine. Carnell Tate, wide receiver, Ohio State. Congratulations. There you go. There's your stupid wide receiver. Good luck throwing to him while he's dead. Cleveland Browns, we're going to do a pretty straightforward and obvious thing here. There's talk about what are they going to do at quarterback. The assumption is they're not going to be drafting a quarterback. It's kind of not a great spot anyways, despite Shedeur literally being 38th out of 38 quarterbacks. But I would say arguably the worst thing on this team is the offensive tackle situation. Tyler Conklin has completely bottomed out at right tackle. Cam Robinson is horrible at left tackle. We have a tackle available. There's no reason to really overthink this one. Spencer Fano to the Browns is very straightforward. Unless we're looking at quarterback or something, I don't see why we would be doing anything else. Although you could argue they have a better case for wide receiver than the Giants do, but, again, let's just leave that alone. Then it gets a little interesting with Washington. If you look at the consensus mock draft, they actually have Caleb Downs going to Washington. But if you look at the Washington team and the most mocked player over the last week, at least, not so much 2 weeks, it's been David Bailey, which is obviously not going to happen because he's been gone for a long time. But Ruben Bain is still available. So I think between Caleb Downs and Ruben Bain is kind of the question, and it's a it's honestly not that difficult of a question. Again, Caleb Downs, very good player. We desperately need help at safety. Will Harris and Quan Martin, really, really not good. Um, but again, positional value, and we also need help all across. I mean, this team is not good, man. The defense is just horrific here. I don't know how you pass on Ruben Bain for Caleb Downs. Let's just put it that way. I just don't know how you do that at this point. If you're saying on the actual big board that Ruben Bain is the better prospect and it's the higher positional value, you know what I mean? I don't know how you do that. So we're going to pick Ruben Bain for the Washington Commanders. As for the New Orleans Saints, we're once again going to be in a situation where I think they're looking at things stupidly, but it's fine. This has been kind of the pick since day one. There hasn't been a lot of discussion. You can look back over the last week. It's been this guy. The last 2 weeks, this guy. The last 3 weeks, this guy. The last you have to go back to 2 months when he was basically tied with Carnell Tate, who is gone. So by far, the most popular pick is Jeremiah Love. No question, electric running back, all that stuff. And he's a Kamara replacement. It fits. He's a do-everything receiving back, running back, all that stuff, right? Okay, fine. Sure. That's fair. I will say, if there was a pass rusher available, you would maybe want to force the issue. Interior offensive line is not available and is kind of, early or whatever, so that doesn't really work. We have receivers. So Jordan Tyson isn't necessarily something I need to run out and do. Mansour Delane would be the one that I would maybe push for over this decision. Cornerback obviously being a premium position. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a good corner. Getting 2 good corners or possibly having Kool-Aid as our number 2 corner, all of that sounds fantastic. Now, I don't know that they have bad corners, especially if you're talking about Quincy Riley. He, as a rookie, had a 61 grade. It's not terrible. But I don't know, man. You can get running backs anytime that are going to be an upgrade over what you're getting right now. But whatever. It is what it is. Jeremiah Love seems to be the very straightforward option, so that's the direction we're just going to go ahead and follow. Then we get to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I just listened to something. I should add it to my notes, but I was kind of iffy on it because I wasn't sure how much stock to put in it as opposed to just a casual statement from Pauline. First of all, Jeremiah Love dominates the mock drafts. So I'm guessing it's Kansas City Chiefs people doing mock drafts saying, nope, we're getting Love. Sorry to tell you, if you actually do a mock draft with like 32 fan bases, he ain't going to make it to you because the Saints are going to keep taking him right in front of you. There was a question that Pauline answered, would they trade up? And his answer was no, because they have too many needs right now. The needs being playmakers like Jeremiah Love. However, with Jeremiah Love gone, they still have some fantastic options. Now, I don't see a ton. I mean, there's so many picks for Jeremiah Love that it's basically not really worth mentioning. Who is the other guy that they keep taking here? That is way too far down, at least as far as the consensus board is considered. Bottom line is this is kind of a straightforward thing, even if the mock drafts don't really have this going this direction. Ruben Bain is actually a very popular pick for them. He is gone. But again, I want to stick with some of the playmakers, and there's a guy right here, second best player available, and that is Jordan Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State. Now, I don't know if Chiefs fans would necessarily disagree with this. They probably would. It's like we got Rice and Worthy and whatnot, and 5 wide receivers fine. I don't know exactly what's going on with Rashee Rice and his domestic stuff and what that's going to lead to. Xavier Worthy has been okay as a receiver. They don't really have a dominant alpha receiver. Rashee Rice would probably be that guy, but again, he had his worst year in year 3, and the heck are we talking? And the legal issues. So again, if it's just me, is this the direction we're going? I don't know, maybe not. But there really are no defensive tackles unless we're reaching. The edge rushers would be a reach. So you've got safety Caleb Downs, you got wide receiver Jordan Tyson, you've got a corner, which is definitely not a need for you. Sonny Styles is a relatively popular pick. I'm not entirely sure why, unless some of these guys are getting cut, because this is one of the best linebacker groups I've seen. So it is what it is. Kansas City Chiefs will select Jordan Tyson, wide receiver, Arizona State. And then we finally get a team to do the thing. The question of whether he would be in the top 10, I guess, gets answered because Caleb Downs will end up going to the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals need a lot of things. I think there's a lot of thought about them building up the offensive line. I just saw something about that recently, something to the effect of everybody knows what needs to happen or something like that. I don't know. But it's really the defense is by far the biggest hindrance to this team's success. Defensive tackle would be great. Hendrickson is almost assuredly gone. So edge rusher is a need. Linebacker is desperately a need. But as much as you could say Sonny Styles is here, I mean, first of all, if you're going linebacker, if you're going at a sort of, let's call it second tier position, like linebacker, running back, whatever, safety is what you're going to do. We took a shot at Jordan Battle. He had a good rookie year. He hasn't been good since. We have Geno Stone, has not been a very good player. Caleb Downs again, some people think he's the best player in this entire draft class. He's available to you at 10. It's not that complicated of a decision at this point. Then we move on to the Dolphins at pick 11, and again, we're in a situation of we know what position we're going. It's just a question of which player. As far as what's been more popular, it depends if you're looking more recent or a little bit older. We'll probably stick to the big board, but basically we're looking at corner. It's a question of Mansour Delane or Jermod McCoy. I think the debate kind of centers around, do you want the more high upside guy or do you want the safer pick? I don't know where you would fall on that, and obviously you'd have to actually quantify, how high and how low is the floor and how safe and all that stuff. But Mansour Delane is seen as the safer, just good corner, with Jermod McCoy having the more dominant season, potentially having a higher upside, whatever. His 2024 tape, which also kind of complicates things, is where he really showed his sort of eliteness. But we're going to stick to what the board is saying, and we're going to select Mansour Delane, cornerback out of LSU. And then final pick before the break at pick 12, the Dallas Cowboys. And this one is surprisingly very straightforward. It's funny. I feel like the Cowboys, it's always like, we know what the Cowboys are doing. They're always picking around 12, and we know what they're picking. But this is currently the top guy on the board, and it's really not even close. It's at 42%, which is really high for the 12th pick as far as how often this person is picked in comparison to some other picks here. But that is going to be Sonny Styles, linebacker out of Ohio State. They've got some talent on the defensive line now, especially bringing in Williams and Clark, and then you've got a couple guys off the edge that are pretty decent. The offense is pretty well established, maybe a little bit of help at tight end, offensive line, whatever. Corner, I think, should be much more in the discussion. I don't know why it's really not. I think my pick would be Jermod McCoy. But linebacker is definitely a massive problem. I just think positional value, I'd be looking at corner. But that's fine. They all want linebacker. They're going to get a linebacker. All right, let's take a break. We'll rip through the second third of this mock draft. We'll be right back. All right, Rams are on the clock right now at pick 13. They acquired this pick from the Atlanta Falcons. Rams, obviously, one of the more complete teams. One of the options is wide receiver. I think we might have done that last week, to be completely honest with you. Nakua obviously is dominant. Devontae's getting a little older. Not sure how long he'll stick around, and then you don't really have a number 3 would be the argument there. But I think the more common one is the fact that they don't really have very good corners. There is a corner available, And so that is the direction we are going to go with Jermod McCoy, cornerback out of Tennessee. Then, as we move on to the Baltimore Ravens at pick 14, the most popular pick, it has started to close the gap a touch. And I do think it's worth possibly discussing. The top person on the board is Mekhi Lemon. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be 34 years old. Zay Flowers is very good, and then Rashad Bateman is not very good. So we kind of have one long-term option in the slot. Mekhi Lemon, I think, makes a good amount of sense here. I think also Keldrick Falk off the edge makes a massive amount of sense. We drafted Mike Green last year. He has been terrible. We have a fourth-round pick, Tavius Robinson, who is terrible. I think that absolutely should be in consideration. If a corner fell, we could go that way. Otherwise, Avion Terrell also is an option because if we look at Marlon Humphrey, had a terrible year last year and is going to be 30. We did draft Nate Wiggins, who took a step back. I don't know. Maybe we feel good that was kind of fluky. That's kind of where I'm leaning for sure. You could even argue Peter Woods would make a good amount of sense here. Because we do have, a couple guys that make sense, but we could certainly use a little bit of extra help to fill out this defensive line. Instead, the most popular pick is Vega Ioane, if that's how you say his name, something like that. And I get it. They don't have, Andrew Voorhees and Daniel Falele are both really bad. There's no doubt about that. And I guess when you're the Baltimore Ravens, we need good offensive line so we can dominate up front. We got Derrick Henry and Jackson and whatnot. And who knows how much longer we're going to have Derrick Henry. He's going to be 32 years old. We got to capitalize while we can, but it just feels like we're going to abandon the defense entirely. And also, the wide receivers going forward. I don't know. It's the most popular pick. I will make the selection under duress. It's not a bad option. It's just not the one that I would do. But we will have them selecting Vega Ioane, interior offensive lineman out of Penn State. Tampa is kind of in a similar situation of we know what we're doing. It's just a question of who. Sonny Styles is also a popular pick, but he's already gone. The most popular pick is Cassius Howell, edge rusher out of Texas A&M. But also another popular pick, in fact, it's the most popular if you just look the last week, is Keldrick Falk. He's much higher on our big board right now. So as far as, we need an edge rusher, and Sonny Styles is not even a consideration. There's really nobody else worth discussing, and I'm not going to reach down to Cassius Howell with Keldrick Falk sitting at the top of my board here. So we're just going to make it easy. Keldrick Falk, edge rusher out of Auburn, is going to go to Tampa. Then we have the New York Jets at pick 16 via the Indianapolis Colts. They need everything. Just about freaking everything. They already took Arvell Reese with their top pick. I think the one thing that everybody's going to be asking at this point is this where you pull the trigger and take the quarterback? Well, if you look at the mock drafts, basically 0 people are doing that. That's not entirely true, but if you look over the last week, it's not really an option. Even if you look back over a longer period of time, Ty Simpson is definitely an option, but there's one option that's significantly higher across the board, and it reminds me very much of the Giants. It's like we have needs everywhere. We have Garrett Wilson, who is a top 10 pick. He's a good receiver, but I don't care. I want another receiver. Like, do you want to fix your offensive line? No. Would you like to get a pass rusher? No. Would you like to get a corner that is good at football? No, I would not. How about a safety or a linebacker that you desperately need? Nope, I'm good. I want a wide receiver. Okay. Do you know who's going to throw to him? No. All right. Is that quarterback going to be protected to be able to throw to him? No. All right. Do you think he's going to be able to score 500 points because your defense sucks? Maybe. I don't know. Who cares? Great. Okay. Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver, USC, will be going to the Jets, who are trying to be the discount version of the Bengals because they don't have a quarterback. But we got a great wide receiver duo, so suck it. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions. pick 17. There is a name that emerges, but it's very, very slight. My thoughts, first of all, before we get to what the pick will eventually be, because again, I'm going to kind of stick with what the consensus has been for the most part. I think Peter Woods needs to be in consideration. I know Alim McNeil has been good at times. He was kind of awful this past year. DJ Reader is going to be 32 years old. You need defensive line help. All right? I know you probably don't think you do because 2 years ago you had a really good defensive line. I don't think you have a very good defensive line. I think Cassius Howell, the edge rusher, at some point, we've been saying this forever, Hutchinson needs a counterpart. Go get a second edge rusher. Are we just going to stick with Marcus Davenport forever, or are we going to get another washed-up bum to stick on the other side, or what is the plan here? I think Avion Terrell, 1,000% needs to be in consideration because your corners are dog crap. You took a shot with Terry and Arnold. It didn't work. It was bad. DJ Reed was your free agent acquisition. He got hurt halfway through the year, and he was eh. And by I mean very eh. These would be probably my top priorities. However, with that said, Taylor Decker is contemplating retirement. He is not sure that he's going to return for the next season. I'm sure the fact that they were fourth in the division, and now he is 31 and a half years old and had the worst year of his career at age, 31, missed some games due to injury. Do you want to run it back or not? Obviously, as a Packer fan, I really, really hope that he does not. They've lost several people. They replaced him with guys like Christian Mahogany and Tate Ratledge that, Tate seemed fine. Mahogany, not so sure about that. And the center situation is already kind of a disaster. If they lose Taylor Decker, the strength of this team has gone to freaking zero in a heartbeat. And I think for that reason, they need to try their best to get out in front of that. And so, with all that being said, Caden Proctor out of Alabama has been the most significant, the most popular pick, and that is the reason. Obviously, if he comes back, this probably changes. Well, it probably doesn't because he's going to be gone sooner than later, but I think a lot of the mock drafts will start going in other directions. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings. There's a very strong consensus on this pick, has been pretty much across the board, and for good reason. They've had a real hard time trying to fill this position and making this not suck. There's definitely a lot of positions we could go, a lot of directions we could go. I think wide receiver is legitimately an option, especially since I saw rumors of could Addison be moved on from. Probably not serious rumors, but whatever. Justin Jefferson ranked barely inside the top 20 as a receiver last year. Most of that is the quarterback's fault, but still, it's worth discussing. Tight end, honestly, Hawkinson ranked 45th among tight ends, really not a very dominant season. Interior offensive line, I think, is definitely something to consider. Running back, if that were a thing, would be something to consider. A lot of things to consider, but the area that they are struggling with the most, with the exception perhaps of Isaiah Rodgers, who's playing some decent football, is corner. They brought in Jeff Okudah, which was the Lions' disaster of a situation. What a horrific thing that is. Jeff Okudah. What happened to that freaking guy? 3rd overall selection. And the last 2, he's barely played, but anyways, that guy's got to go. Byron Murphy has not panned out. None of the swings that the Vikings have really made have panned out. Avion Terrell, assuming he's still here, we've talked about him several times to other teams. If he's not, that puts them in a real bind because there's not a lot of great cornerback options until you get out to like Cisse and Colton Hood way later. Either you go a different direction or you trade back if you're the Vikings. But as long as Avion Terrell is here, that is the pick we're going to make. Then you have the Carolina Panthers. I think this one has been also extremely popular for quite a while. There are some other options. I think defensive line has been a really popular thing, whether it's Peter Woods, Cassius Howell. I'm tempted to actually go in that direction, but I don't think I will. I'm going to stick with what has been the most popular pick still up to this point, and that is the tight end, Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon, to the Carolina Panthers. If you can't tell, I'm very much positional value and all that stuff. I in a million years I would never take a tight end there. I just would not. There's just no freaking way. I've got a quarterback. I got a decent running back. I've got a wide receiver that doesn't suck now. Jalen Coker is quite good. I don't give a crap if I don't really have a tight end. I'll deal with that in free agency or a later time in the draft. I have a terrible defensive line outside of Derek Brown, who honestly has not really been dominant since 2023. So, yeah, I zero chance I would ever go tight end. But that's what the people want. That's what the people get. Dallas is back on the clock. There has not been a strong consensus on this basically at any point. But there is a relatively strong lean here based on who's available. So the Cowboys took a linebacker in Sonny Styles to start things off. Again, you could go a couple different directions, but there aren't a lot of corners to come in and help, which is something that I would have loved to have done with the first pick, but we didn't for some stupid reason. There are no safeties to come in and help. I think offensive tackles should absolutely 1,000% be discussed, but nobody seems to want to have that discussion. So we won't. I don't see hardly any Caleb Lomu love. I guess we're under the illusion that Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele are good tackle options. I don't know what we're doing. I think the strongest lean, again, based on who's available, is going to be off the edge. Ezeraku is actually looking pretty solid as a rookie second-round pick, but Jadeveon Clowney on the other side is 33, still playing decent football, but 33, so I guess that's kind of thinking. Probably, again, wouldn't be my top priority, but seems to be theirs. Some other popular picks, Keem Mesidor, TJ Parker, Keldrick Falk, Emmanuel McNeil, Warren, a lot of guys that are either gone or are not on our board for quite some time here. So we'll just go with Cassius Howell. Again, if it were entirely up to me, this is Caleb Lomu, the offensive tackle, 24,000 times out of 24,000. But we live in friggin' crazy town. Then we get to a very fun pick, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Boy, oh boy, did this flip on its head fast. Well, maybe it didn't flip. I had, wide receiver help. You got Denzel Boston. That I think makes a lot of sense. This is what I've always been a fan of doing, giving Rodgers that guy. Maybe it's because we don't know the Rodgers status, or maybe it's just being smart and looking to the future, which is probably what you should do. But it is not even close right now. I mean, the number two option is unanimously wide receiver, but the number one option is Ty Simpson, and by a mile. And so I guess that's what we're doing. I was under the impression we were all on the same page that we were going to give Rodgers a receiver, and then maybe in the second round we'd slip around and grab a guy. Although our second round option went back to school, didn't he? Such is life. Ty Simpson, quarterback out of Alabama. Poor freaking Rodgers. That guy's going to come back under the. Maybe he's going to wait until after the draft just to make sure they don't bring back Ty Simpson. You know what I mean? Steelers would be pissed, but I mean, they have no leverage here. Rodgers is just going to flat out tell them, if you draft a quarterback in the first round, I will not come back. Up to you. That would be freaking hilarious. But we're not there yet. Ty Simpson, there you go. All right, Chargers at pick 22. They really, really want an interior offensive lineman like Ioane, but he is long gone. All the Chargers mock drafters are like, yeah, we got him. Yeah, okay. Well, you didn't. But with him off the board, oh boy. Just looking at some of the needs that they have, I understand why they want an interior offensive lineman. I genuinely do. We're going to have to hammer that pretty hard in the later rounds because we don't really have a ton of great options right now freaking brutal. As a secondary option, though, I sort of concur with the direction that has been going, especially looking at the board. Top available player. We're going to take defensive tackle Peter Woods out of Clemson. We are in we need to consider trading up territory, which sounds crazy, trading up for a freaking guard. But unless we're going to do something in free agency, which we probably should, it's getting pretty ugly. I think maybe something else to consider would be wide receiver, with Keenan Allen being 34 years old, just about. Lad McConkey was not exactly the same guy in year 2 as he was in year 1, and Quentin Johnston obviously has not ever materialized into a dominant player. Something to consider. Eagles, the most popular pick is Kenyon Sadiq, who we had going off the board already. If we look at the consensus here, they have Caden Proctor. He went pick 17. A lot of wishful thinking for the Philadelphia Eagles and their fans. I might have to make this pick myself because none of this is really making sense. There is Monroe Freeling is a relatively popular option. Obviously, we're targeting the Lane Johnson replacement, Lane Johnson being almost 36 years old, still playing at a high level, but any minute he's going to be done. The other popular option seems to be TJ Parker, the edge rusher out of Clemson. I mean, I understand this is kind of your thing. You just keep drafting edge rushers, but freaking good Lord, man. At some point, we got to look somewhere else. So I think I am going to make this decision. I don't see this as a popular pick at all, but I don't really care. With the A.J. Brown news, and I don't know the latest on it, but it's sounding like there's a decent chance he will not be staying. We've got Devontae Smith in the slot, and that's about it. And I don't think that that's good enough. And the top guy on our board is Denzel Boston. So we will be selecting Denzel Boston. And then the final pick on this side of the break, the Cleveland Browns took offensive lineman Spencer Fano with that first pick. Denzel Boston is the most popular option who just went. Second most popular option is Caleb Lomu, which my first instinct is to say, well, that depends if you get a tackle the first time. I don't think it does. I think you need 2 tackles. The question is, do you do that? Do you take 2 tackles in the first round? Caleb Banks, the defensive tackle, is not the direction I would go. We've got some pretty good pieces there. We also invested in Mason Graham already. Concepcion is an option, but I know I've done that in the past. I think we go back-to-back tackles here. I mean, our tackles are like the 2 worst players on our team are our left and right tackles. Screw it. Caleb Lomu, offensive tackle to the Cleveland Browns. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back on the other side. We will finish off the first round and then grab a couple picks for all the teams that have not made selections. We'll be right back. Alrighty, Chicago Bears now up. Caden McDonald is the most popular pick here. A few others, a lot of them are defensive line. You've got Lee Hunter, and you've got TJ Parker. I don't know if it's a preference thing or the fact that Caleb Banks doesn't generally make it this far. I don't really know. But with Caleb Banks being at the top, I think that's pretty straightforward that we're going to take him. Again, Caden McDonald, TJ Parker, solid options right now, but Banks just makes more sense. So the Chicago Bears take Caleb Banks, defensive tackle. Buffalo Bills on the clock. Bills very heavily, again, it's kind of we know the position. It's just a question of which. And this guy has been very, very popular for a very long time, and he is the top of our board, so this is nice and easy for us. The Buffalo Bills will select wide receiver Kevin Concepcion, Texas A&M. 49ers at pick 27. Absolutely no consensus here whatsoever. On the actual the consensus mock draft, they have Monroe Freeling, which is definitely an option. Concepcion is the top guy that they've drafted. He's gone. Lomu is next. He's gone. Denzel Boston is next. He's gone. Kenyon Sadiq is next. He's gone. So, again, a lot of wishful thinking here for 49ers fans. doing their mock drafts. I feel like this is another area where I need to kind of step in here and just do this. Um, Even Monroe Freeling, I understand it. I get it. We've got a left tackle in Trent Williams. Maybe that is the direction we should go. I mean, if we don't have that, you got to worry about it's just the defensive line, man. Holy cow. We took Michael Williams at 11 last year. He was god awful. And then the defensive tackles. Holy cow. This has got to be one of the worst defensive tackle groups in all of football. And the top option right now is Caden McDonald, defensive tackle out of Ohio State. The second best option is TJ Parker, edge rusher. Am I going to scroll down to Monroe Freeling to get you a guy to replace Williams? I don't think I am. I think I'm going to select Caden McDonald, defensive tackle out of Ohio State. As for the Texans, you can tell by their mock drafting, it is just offensive line desperation. It's a whole lot of guys that are gone, a whole lot of guys that are still there, including even guys like Prenyon. So, again, pretty straightforward here. It's a question of player, not so much position. Monroe Freeling is the top available option. So I'm just going to go ahead and give them offensive tackle out of Georgia, Monroe Freeling. LA Rams back on the clock. We took cornerback Jermod McCoy with that first pick. Monroe Freeling is the next most popular pick for them, who just went, followed by Avion Terrell. Give me a break. I mentioned wide receiver before. There's not a ton of wide receivers. In fact, there's basically no wide receivers right now. You'd have to drop down to Omar Cooper, so that's not really an option right now. We could double up on corner again and go with Brandon Cisse or Colton Hood. To be honest, and again, they don't really have a lot of terrible things anywhere. Alaric Jackson is solid and he's not old. We could argue that about McClendon. He had a really good year. I don't know if that's a fluke or not. If we're looking for offensive line, the interior seems solid. I don't know about the age. Avila is young, although that looked kind of fluky. Coleman is, center is 30. Dotson is 29. Could certainly make a case for Prenyon. It's just a little bit of a reach. Boy, that's tough. I'm kind of digging the double down thing just because, I mean, what is the worst case scenario? I mean, obviously they both could suck, but you could end up with two. I mean, look at the Eagles when they drafted two corners and both of them ended up being elite. I mean, that transformed their team. They got two top 10 corners right now in Mitchell and DeJean. Screw it. I am going to take Brandon Cisse here, cornerback out of South Carolina. Talked myself into it. And if one of them becomes good and the other one not, fine. We solved the biggest problem we have. All right, Denver Broncos. The consensus mock draft has C.J. Allen. Most popular pick by a mile is C.J. That was the pick I was actually thinking of. I don't know if I said it. I was thinking about C.J. Allen, linebacker out of Georgia for the Rams. They've got kind of linebackers, and it doesn't look like they've invested a ton in them. Spates, I think, is a UDFA. Landman, I think, is a UDFA. I think getting a elite, guy in the middle of the field could actually be pretty cool, but I decided not to do it. The Broncos, however, seem to be hell-bent on C.J. Allen, have been for some time. Anthony Hill or Kenyon Sadiq being some other options that they seem to like, but Anthony Hill's way further down at linebacker, so I'm not going to reach for that. Sadiq has been gone forever. So this one's pretty easy. C.J. Allen, linebacker out of Georgia, going to the Denver Broncos. It's far from a consensus here for the Patriots, but it seems like the thing that they want the most is the thing that is the most prevalent. In fact, it's the top two options for us. T.J. Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson, Akeem Mesidor, edge rusher out of Miami. T.J. Parker and Cassius Howell and Akeem Mesidor and T.J. Parker have been kind of the top ones. Recently, it's been a little different if you look over the last week, but we're dealing in very small sample sizes here. So I think we'll keep this relatively straightforward. I don't really have any objection as long as you need an edge rusher. I don't think there's ever a reason not to take an edge rusher, especially when it's the best guy on the board. So TJ Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson to New England. And then finally, for the actual first-round picks, we have the Seattle Seahawks. By kind of a lot, Brandon Cisse has been the top guy. Been talking about this for a while. I remember watching the Super Bowl and Josh Jobe, or Joby as I always call him, was seen as like the big liability on the team. They seem to want to rectify that pretty immediately. Cisse is gone. However, Colton Hood is still sitting here. I don't know if there'd be any kind of direct objection to Colton Hood as far as schematically or whatever. But, you know, I know he didn't have a very good Senior Bowl, but as things stand right now, it looks like that would be the most obvious pick. So we will have Colton Hood, cornerback out of Tennessee, going to the Seattle Seahawks. All right, let's make a couple other picks here. Atlanta Falcons. They pick at pick 48, 16th pick in the second round. Looking at their situation, I think last time we went through this, I think when I did a second-round pick, I might have had them taking a wide receiver, which seems odd because they got Pitts, they got London, they got Robinson, they got... But outside of the top two, it's not great. Mooney was quite terrible. Somehow he's only 28 years old. I feel like Darnell Mooney's been around forever. Sills is awful and 30. He's the exact opposite. He's brand new and he's old. But I think one of the big things to consider is corner. A.J. Terrell suddenly is not good at football. I don't know what happened to him. They've got Mike Hughes, who's been very up and down, mostly down, pushing 30. They really need corner help. The defensive line also is a big issue, especially with the James Pierce situation. Not that he was ever good to begin with. He had a bad rookie year. Now he may be facing prison time. I don't really know. Leonard Floyd is very, very old. Edge and corner, to me, seem like the biggest needs. If you look at around pick 48, if you're giving them a little bit early, you've got basically corners. You got Keith Abney at 44. More closely would be Chris Johnson, cornerback out of San Diego State. If you look after 48, there's a bunch of wide receivers to consider. Zechariah Branch, Malachi Fields, Chris Brezel. Not a ton. LT Overton, who I'm kind of like on, but I guess who cares? It's not really the point. It's hard to not go corner unless we go Overton. And there's a billion wide receivers. I mean, 1, 2, 3 of these 4. Then you got another wide receiver here in Bernard and Surratt. I mean, edge feels like a big reach outside of Overton, which is a little bit of a reach. I just feel like corner is the way to go. Just based on what's available and what's sitting here. I mean, if you look at anything else, I mean, there's linebacker, but no, that's not a thing. Jennings Dunker, really don't need him at all. We've got a very solid interior offensive line. Same with Chase Besantis. I mean, corner, wide receiver, and then Overton, that's it. So I'm gonna give them, he may be gone. Obviously, we don't know. We're not doing the actual mock draft into the second round, but Chris Johnson, cornerback out of San Diego State. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts picking at pick 47. Technically, this would be one pick before because, he switched first, second, whatever, but that's fine. Colts they've got a pretty solid group here. I think linebacker is a strong consideration here. It's quite bad. Corner is solid, especially with the addition of Sauce Gardner. I think you should consider defensive line or edge as a complement to Latu, who's quite good. Kwity Paye is not very good. So again, we're kind of back to the LT Overton discussion. Wide receiver, I'm not super interested in again, which again is very strong at this point in the draft. Defensive tackle, I mean, unless I grant you a little bit and say you could get Kristen Miller, which I think would be cool. In fact, DeForest Buckner is solid, but he's 32. That may be our biggest need. It's just a question of whether I'd want to, give him somebody. He's at consensus 43. That's probably our best option if we're going to say he's still available. I think after that, I'm looking at where did he go? The linebacker, Jake Galday out of Cincinnati would be probably my next option. But I'll go ahead and be nice. I'll give him Kristen Miller, defensive tackle out of Georgia. I think I had the Packers taking him. Obviously, I don't know where these guys are going to fall. But more than likely, he's an early second-round pick, which is what this, it's a mid-second-round pick, I guess. And again, I really think Galladay would be the pick if Miller is not here, but we'll say that he is. Then we get the Green Bay Packers. The Packers pick at 52. Again, there's still a pile of wide receivers here. Chris Bell, Malachi Fields, Chris Brazzell, Jeremy Bernard, Elijah Surratt. It's just infected everywhere. Jennings Dunker is falling. He is getting quite a bit closer. In fact, he's at 50, and I don't think I can pass on Jennings Dunker. I really don't. We'll discuss some of the other options here. Chris Johnson just went. He's a little bit early, but he's gone now, so we'll say that that's not a thing. I won't go earlier than Jennings Dunker here. Linebacker Jake Galladay, again, I think is a consideration, depending on what's going on with our linebacker situation and whether or not we're going to be bringing back Quay, etc. LT Overton, again, I think is a consideration, certainly. Keontae Scott, the cornerback. I know Malik Muhammad is much more popular, and we talked about that. It's actually today's podcast. We did a mock draft for the Packers, and I think that's who we took was Malik Muhammad. Where is he even on here? I think he's quite a ways down at this point, isn't he? Where is Malik? Yeah, he's all the way down at 81, so that's more of a third-round pick at this point. But the point is, schematically, at least based on what we think our defense is going to look like with the cover 4 thing being prominent, Malik makes a lot of sense, but he's too much of a reach at this point. So it would be Keontae Scott. Pons at cornerback is kind of not as popular. He's falling, by the way. He was kind of a reach at one point. Now he's drifting out of the second round. There's not a ton of options. I think Jake Galladay at linebacker, LT Overton at edge, or Jennings Dunker, who again, he may be gone, but if he's sitting there, how do you go any other direction? I mean, I know the Packers like a little bit more premier, but we've taken running backs and interior guys. We took Josh Myers in the second round, I think. We took Elton Jenkins in the second round. We've taken linebackers in the second round and first for that matter. I know it's our first pick, but this just seems too easy. Slam dunker. Slam dunker. Okay. Where he plays would be kind of up in the air, and that's sort of the problem with our situation with the Green Bay Packers because if we don't move on from anybody, it's like, well, we already have our guards, right? We have 2 centers, unless we move on from Elton, but even then we have Sean Ryan, who we need to move on from. We have a left guard in Banks, who we need to move on from. We have a right guard in Belton. We can't, and hopefully he's going to be solid. Ideally, Jennings Dunker's our left guard. Or put Belton at left guard. No, he's a right guard. You know what I mean? But we have to frickin' be proactive and move on from some of these guys. All right, finally, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars who pick at pick 56. Interior offensive line is pretty popular. Guys like Connor Lew. Again, I think that's a little bit of a reach. He's at 73. Doesn't mean it can't or won't happen. I'm just going based on the board that I'm looking at here. There's no other real interior guys until Lew. What else do we have here? Obviously, interior offensive line is a big deal. Ezra Cleveland's fine, but center right guard. We're not we said Travis Hunter's going to be a corner now, right? Not a wide receiver. So that's not really a thing, although we do have Brian Thomas. So, corner, I think definitely needs to be considered. Let me look at what they're at in nickel here. He's not bad. Jordan Lewis, although he's 30 years old. And then we have Monteric Brown, who had a good year, but that seems fluky. He's a 7th-round pick. He's never been good before. And then we have Greg Newsome, who's just bad at football. Corner makes a lot of sense. And Keontae Scott is just sitting right there, as is D'Angelo Pons. We don't need linebacker. Safety would be great. A.J. Halsey would be an option for sure. Also, edge again, if we want to do Overton or Joshua Josephs, Gabe Jackas, Derek Moore, all in that kind of range there. So unfortunately, no defensive tackles here, which also they could use some help with. It's just kind of a bad situation to be in. You need interior offensive line. There are none. You need, safety is there. You need defensive tackle. It's not there. I'm just going to go what I think makes the most sense, and that is Keontae Scott. Again, I don't know where Jaguars fans are at on their corners. Maybe they think that they're fine. I don't know. But Keontae Scott is probably the best player available that fits a need. Outside of Overton, I'm just biased against Overton. I just don't care for him at this point. He probably should be gone, but I'm just going to skip that and say no. I'm going to say he got drafted already. Somebody saw how great he is and drafted him. So, anywho, that's it, folks. I'm out of here. I'm going to go make some freaking chicken thighs, baby. 52 degrees outside. Let's go fire up your grills. Have yourselves a great rest of your day. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.